to distinguish anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism as advocated for by Jewish Americans and Jewish Europeans themselves.
We're going to leave that as our final comment. We appreciate Francesca and Farid for as always, really giving us a lot of information and contextualizing the issue for us. Now, the reason I brought up, again, the issue of anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism, as Francesca and Farid, they're both wonderfully described, is because this is continually the deflection tactic that is used. Now, that's not to say that real anti-Semitism does not exist. That's not what the issue is. But it's also important to then understand that when we are talking about criticizing Israel or a boycott of Israel in this fashion, by Ben & Jerry's or otherwise, this has been a tactic that, as Farid there said, was used against the apartheid regime of South Africa. It is a non-violent tactic. It is not terrorism, as the Israeli president there has pointed out and has labeled it. Nevertheless, yes, if there is any hatred, if there is any anti-Semitism, that should be called out. But again, this is about the issue of human rights of Palestinians, and that is what must always be at the center focus when we are discussing such issues. I'll be back with our next segment after this break.
The new US administration has been asking the BJP government to begin to clean up its act in occupied Kashmir. So how far is this correct?
I think India has been criticized in international forums.
It was a complete failure because even in Modi's own admission, he said, Dil ki duriyan hai.
Given an option, would you stay or would you also leave?
As an educated Afghan and as someone who wants to decide the future of this country, I would choose to stay here.
Do you think that at the end of the day, it's going to be the same policy?
The big difference really is going to be where they separate from the United States.
How many attacks have the Iranians mounted against the Israeli infrastructure?
It's very noisy, and usually we have the information that have been shared by the Israeli government.
मेरा नाम महगुल है और मेरी उम्र 18 साल है। मेरा ताल्लुक़ लाहौर से है और मैं एक प्रोफेशनल चेस प्लेयर हूँ। जब मैं 5 साल की थी तो मैं अपने पापा को चेस खेलता हुआ देखती थी। उनको देख कर मेरा इंटरेस्ट डेवलप हुआ और पापा ने जब देखा मेरा इंटरेस्ट चेस में तो उन्होंने इस चीज़ को काफ़ी सीरियसली लिया और इस तरह पापा ने मेरी चेस कंटिन्यू करवाई और पापा ही मेरे प्रोफेशनल चेस कोच हैं। 2011 में मैंने नेशनल लेवल पर क्वालिफाई किया और फिर मैंने वर्ल्ड चेस ओलंपियाड खेला टर्की में जब मैं 11 साल की थी और 2012 में ही मैंने गिनीज का रिकॉर्ड बनाया। 42 सेकंड्स के अंदर मैंने चेस बोर्ड अरेंज किया था विद वन हैंड। 2016 में मैंने क्वालिफाई किया वर्ल्ड चेस ओलंपियाड के लिए बाकू अज़रबैजान में और मैंने वुमेन कैंडिडेट मास्टर का टाइटल विन किया और मैं पाकिस्तान की सबसे यंगेस्ट WCM हूँ। और जब मैंने टाइटल विन किया था तो वहाँ पर ये नहीं कहा जा रहा था कि महगुल ने टाइटल विन किया, बल्कि ये कहा जा रहा था कि पाकिस्तान ने टाइटल विन किया और मेरे लिए उस वक्त काफ़ी ये प्राउडफुल मूवमेंट था। और इस वक्त मैं पंजाब चेस चैम्पियन हूँ और नेशनल लेवल पर मैं नंबर 2 पे हूँ। मैंने चेस के साथ साथ अपनी स्टडी को भी कंटिन्यू रखा हुआ है और मैं 2nd ईयर की स्टूडेंट हूँ। मेरा ड्रीम ये है कि मैं वुमेन ग्रैंड मास्टर का टाइटल विन करूँ इंटरनेशनल लेवल पर और अपनी कंट्री पाकिस्तान का नाम रोशन करूँ।
Welcome back, viewers. You're still here in Scope with me, Waqar Rizvi. In this segment, we're going to discuss two polls that have come out of the United States. And I know that polls should always be taken with a grain of salt because there are many, many times when they're not completely reliable. Nevertheless, they do give us an excuse to at least discuss the issues, and that is what we're going to try to do in this show. Now, the first poll is a Reuters and Ipsos poll, which shows that about a third of Americans have not even heard of critical race theory. And you'll remember we did a show on critical race theory not too long ago, what it is and what exactly its impact can be if it is applied. Now, a majority of Americans in the same poll say that they do want the history of racism and slavery taught in schools to students. On the opposite side, then, we have a conservative think tank's report, Rasmussen, which has found, according to its national survey, that nearly a quarter of Americans think that blacks are, in fact, more racist than whites in the country. And it goes on to, of course, giving various other details, saying that 10% say most Asians and Hispanics are also, in fact, racist as well. Let's discuss both of those polls a bit further, and I'm joined by Dr. Stephen Taylor, who is an associate professor at the Department of Government at American University. He's joining us this morning from Washington, D.C. Joining us from East Lansing in Michigan is Dr. Ronald Hall, who is a professor at the School of Social Work at Michigan State University. Ronald and Stephen, good morning to you both, and thank you both for taking our time out this Saturday morning to speak to us. Ronald, I'd like to start with you, and I'd like to start with the first poll, the Reuters and Ipsos poll, saying that about a third of Americans have not even heard of critical race theory, but nevertheless, the majority do want, the history of racism and slavery taught in schools. That's certainly a positive thing, isn't it?
Well, I'm not surprised that a third of Americans have not heard of critical race theory. We're not really a reading culture anymore. The fact that most people want to have some of the transgressions, some of the historical transgressions taught in schools, I think that's a good thing. But unfortunately, like so many other issues of late, they have been politicized. And once something is politicized, then politics becomes the objective, and common sense seems to make no sense at all.
Indeed, yeah. And, when it comes to the critical race theory issue, we've had major conservative backlash against it, right? A lot of Republicans have, in fact, enacted measures to ensure that critical race theory is not taught in schools within their districts, at least. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that the contributions of African Americans have been historically overlooked, and there are people who wish to continue to see that they're overlooked. That there's a desire among the conservatives only to look at what they perceive as shortcomings among African Americans in the African American community, and critical race theory, as they deem it, would show some shortcomings of the white majority, which I think that goes against some of the desires of the conservative community.
And then, Ronald, I want to get to the Rasmussen report quickly, because I know that it's making a very big deal, and a lot of the conservative media made a very big deal of the fact that a quarter of Americans, according to this specific poll, think that blacks are more racist than whites. Newsmax is running with this on its front page, at least when I had gone to the website of Newsmax. What do you make of that? I mean, there has been that accusation for a while now that reverse racism, in fact, against the Caucasian/white community has grown.
Well, first of all, statistics, whenever you have an objective, you can always find statistics to verify that objective. I would first want to know if the people who were surveyed or interviewed, if that was a representative sample. Secondly, when you talk about a think tanks usually have political objectives. And so if they had found statistics that conflicted with a particular belief that they might want to have, those statistics would probably have not gotten out. And critical race theory has become something that is a buzzword because I think it simplifies a political position that conservatives in particularly might want to take. The critical race theory grew out of the work of a man by the name of Bell and Richard Allen, Derek Bell and Richard Allen, and they were attorneys who were concerned about the regression of the progress that had been made during the 60s. And critical race theory was a simple way of talking about that And getting to the idea that yes, women, yes, people who have a different orientation, they are discriminated against, but the main discriminating factor, race, is critical. And to discuss race in many instances is not something that is conducive to a conservative political point of view. So obviously, if you bring that into the fold of discussion, that's something that may become an obstacle. That may become a, some might say, a liberal vehicle for proceeding with policies and laws and statutes and legislations that may be counter to a conservative political agenda.
Stephen, that's what's spoken of a lot, right, in conservative circles, that the white man, and I'm just using that as a very loose phrase there, is under attack now. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, and I guess they see this poll as showing that the so-called white man is under attack. A poll that supposedly shows that 1/4 of African American, 1/4 of people think that African Americans are more racist than whites. First of all, you have to look at, these are what I call shortcut polls. And instead of having a detailed questionnaire asking people how they felt about other groups, other racial groups, they're just asking them, how do you feel that other racial groups feel about them? So what I'm saying is what they should have done, a more accurate poll would have been to go to African Americans, ask them, have a list of questions, a scale of questions, and ask them how they feel about other races in terms of different aspects. And then likewise go to white Americans and do so. That would be a true statistically relevant poll, instead of just saying to people, you think blacks are more racist than whites, and then 1/4 of people will say that. So, and then the fact that they find more white people think that black people are more black people are racist than whites is indication that the white man is under siege. Well, I don't see white people as being under siege in this country when nearly all of the governors are white, nearly the overwhelming all but 2 senators are white, and one of them was put into office by a white majority against the wishes of the black majority. When the president is white, so I don't see where they think that white people are at a disadvantage in this country. So I really have some suspicions of that polling data. As a suspicion, I don't believe that that white people are under siege. And another thing is that a lot of times, when you're talking about racism, racism is a lot of times a result of lack of exposure to other groups of people. And on that basis alone, I would say that black people are probably more open-minded to whites than whites are to blacks, because black people have no choice, being the minority, both in power and financially and in numbers, have no choice but to deal on a day-to-day, probably an hourly basis with people of other racial groups, as opposed to white people who can isolate themselves. So I would say that it probably be an accurate poll, it would show quite the opposite.
Another, and I'm just being devil's advocate for the sake of it, another argument that is put forth a lot when it comes to, criticizing Black Lives Matter and just, overall, all this talk of racism within the United States, is that people are asking or are not proud to be American. They're asking everybody to almost apologize for being American, that they're demeaning their country in some way. How do you respond to that?
I'd like to follow up and add a comment also. I can understand that a lot of white Americans will feel threatened. What we're in the process of experiencing here in the U.S. is a sea change. We just had an African-American Black president. Currently, we have an African-American vice president. And this is something that is completely new. The norm for many Euro-Americans, the norm is white domination. What we're in the process of experiencing now is diversity almost at every level. To a lot of Euro-Americans, particularly conservative Euro-Americans, this represents a loss.
Welcome to Indus News. Let's take you live to Chengdu, China, where Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, along with the Chinese Foreign Minister, is holding a press conference.
Success and the President's success in achieving the second goal of Chinese rejuvenation. With 1.4 billion hard-working Chinese, I am confident you will achieve your second goal in the next century as well. I want to thank you for the invitation. We agreed in Dushanbe to meet to discuss the evolving situation in Afghanistan, and we've had a threadbare discussion on the situation in Afghanistan. I'm happy to share with you that we are on the same page. We have same objectives, and our interests in Afghanistan converge. China is the neighbor, so is Pakistan. And we feel that the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan have more at stake and must play a more proactive role in the months and weeks ahead in order to achieve peace and stability in Afghanistan. I am sad at the loss of life due to floods in the Henan province, and I very forcefully condemned the cowardly Tasu attack. We are one, and we've agreed that we will not allow any element to sabotage our ever-growing partnership. Their designs will be defeated. Our resolve, our commitment to each other is unquestionable. Every Pakistani was touched and hurt at your loss. Your loss is my loss. Every Chinese national is important to us. You have contributed to our socio-economic development, and this flagship project, CPEC, is a clear manifestation of how we intend to proceed in the years ahead. In this third round of our strategic dialogue, I'm very happy to share with the people of China and the people of Pakistan that we have both agreed that we will upgrade our bilateral and strategic relationship to a new level, because we feel we have a lot to share. And in this new era, where regions will rise together, develop together, China has a lot to contribute to our region, has contributed, and can contribute. I'm of the view China can play a more prominent role in Afghanistan, because you have an agenda of peace and stability, of development, of cooperation. And Afghanistan, in the days ahead, will need international support of its neighbors. And we are here to give a clear message that we condemn violence. We're all for reduction in violence. We want to see reconciliation in Afghanistan. We want to see the peace process move forward. And we want to have a broad-based, inclusive government in Afghanistan, decided by the people of Afghanistan, their leadership, through negotiations. Pakistan, as you know, has played the role of a facilitator. Our role has been acknowledged. At times, people have been harsh in their statements, but in the larger interest of regional peace and stability, we have shown restraint and we've been magnanimous in our approach, and we will continue to do that. I am happy and I'm grateful that China has always taken a principled position on Jammu and Kashmir. And I'm happy to hear that you reiterated your commitment to that international obligation that is yet to be fulfilled. People of Jammu and Kashmir are going through testing times. The difficulties, the atrocities they are facing is known to all. The recent meeting that took place in Delhi, there was an open admission that there's a gap, in the hearts and minds. And Srinagar and Delhi are not seeing eye to eye on many issues. Kashmiris want the actions of 5th of August to be revisited and the statehood restored. People of Pakistan are appreciative of the role played by China in raising the issue, in helping us raise the issue in the Security Council, and your firm support over there. We are equally touched and grateful for the support we've received on COVID-19. It's a global pandemic. The world has never seen what we are seeing today. We're living in difficult times, and in this difficult time, China stood by Pakistan by giving us the necessary support, by giving us close to 34 million doses of vaccine, and more are in the pipeline, as you just said, 8 million of Sinopharm and 15 million doses of Sinovac and pipeline, and we are grateful. We condemn the smear campaign that was undertaken, and we feel that the scientific approach in dealing with this pandemic is the correct approach and the only sensible approach forward. On the issue of our bilateral relations, we are satisfied that they are moving in the right direction. Our strategic, our economic, and our security cooperation has moved with speed and determination, and in this delegation we have senior people from the security establishment who've shared their point of view on counterterrorism cooperation with their colleagues in a very friendly and cordial environment. I'm thankful for the Chinese support, and I want to reassure the leadership and the people of China that we are friends and we will remain friends. Let the world know that we are tested friends, we are trusted friends, and we have mutual interests, and nothing will come between us. So long live China-Pakistan friendship.
Well, that was Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi holding a press conference after meeting with China's Foreign Minister, and he once again reiterated the strong bond between Pakistan and China, and he recently just said that we are tested friends and we are trusted friends. We'll keep you updated with this news and from the world. Keep watching Indus News.
Pride.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the people who say this, that discussing racism hurts pride, are some of the very people who criticize the institutions of the United States. For instance, the people who took part in the coup attempt on January 6th, who attacked one of the basic institutions of our government, the United States Capitol, who built a gallows and threatened to execute the vice president. Why are they considered patriotic? And why are they considered people who love the United States? Whereas people who are out there protesting by taking advantage of the provisions, of the freedoms granted by the constitutions, and enjoying those freedoms, taking advantage, and quite often, usually peacefully, they're considered people who are not who are not patriotic. That's the reverse. Just like if you look back, they've revised history to think that Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee were patriots when they were treasoners. Whereas people who are demonstrating for the United States to live up to the Constitution, constitutional guarantees, and in some cases being successful by using the very freedoms guaranteed to us, they're considered to be unpatriotic. That's a revision of history that's very inaccurate, and it's just people who follow it are just exercising their stupidity.
Very well. Well, the final word, but we really appreciate both Stephen and Ronald for their time this morning and for sharing their expertise with us. We were discussing there critical race theory, the fact that about a third of Americans have not even heard of it, yet a majority of Americans do want the proper history of racism and slavery in their country to be taught to students. On the other side, as I said, there was a conservative poll that was done, finding a quarter of Americans think that blacks are more racist than whites. Our esteemed panelists there questioned whether or not the way that this poll was conducted was done in a proper fashion, as we know the standards of polling are. Important issues to discuss because these have long-term ramifications for how then divisions and polarization within the country are then hopefully resolved going forward. I'll be back with my final segment after this break. Welcome back, viewers. You're still here in Scope with me, Waqar Vizian. And the final segment of today's show, we're going to discuss France, and quite a few NGOs have joined together to then take the French government, specifically more than the French police, to the highest administrative authority in the country, aiming to fix what they contend is racial profiling during identity checks that are carried out in that country. Now, this has been an issue for quite a while now, and the French government hadn't even responded to a petition that had been filed to the government within the 4-month time frame that those NGOs had given it to respond, and that's why then this case has now been filed in this fashion. Will this be the way to hold the French government to account for the racial profiling of people of color, be they black people and or people of Arab descent? And there have been a number of cases, right? There was a case, I believe, at a train station not too long ago where I believe it was 3 students of color who were taken out of line of their class and then were questioned and were put through extra security checks of a sort. And that was seen as a very obvious case of racial profiling. That's just one example. I'm sure there have been many others during that time and recently as well. Let's discuss those issues a bit further. We're now joined by Dr. Alex Issa, who is a lecturer and research associate of international relations at Sciences Po. He's joining us today from the French capital, Paris. Also joining us from the French capital is Dr. Louis-Georges Tin, who is the president of the CRAN, which is the French Black Coalition, and is the prime minister of the state of the African diaspora. Louis-Georges and Alex, thank you to both of you for joining us today. Alex, let me start with you. What do you make of this lawsuit action? The French government has so far been fairly offhands and muted when it comes to criticism of this policy.
Yes, indeed. Actually, the problem is that there is many racism issues that haven't been solved yet in France. Whether it's anti-Black or anti-Arab, we can still see that there are many issues that need to be solved, and the French government didn't pronounce anything yet regarding the issue, despite the many initiatives taken by NGOs, whether they are locals or international. And you can also relate it to the fact that there is also some social issues that need to be solved as well, because we're in a state where we have a certain social reproduction. And unfortunately, if you come from a poor neighborhood, and most of the time these poor neighborhoods are related to Black people or Arab people, it's very tough for you to make an impact and to be able to leave this neighborhood in a good way. We have witnessed many cases where Black people or people of Arab descent that have been arrested or checked just for their IDs by the police, whether it's in the metro or in the streets. And it's a very important issue here in France because the problem of racism still not getting any way to be solved. And we can even see it in the political discourse generally that's getting more into the far right wings, that people from these descents are considered, let's say, as a threat to the national security, knowing that these people are in the French society and they are also French. They have the French passports most of the time. They are considered as French citizens. Yet they are not considered, I wouldn't say as equal, but as having the same rights than the others.
Louis-Georges, is the issue then, as Alex there said, that society as well, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, what Alex said, that society itself at large isn't as concerned about this issue because in many ways it's limited to the banlieues and the people who live in the banlieues?
Yes, what our colleague has said is just the truth. In fact, France regards itself as a country of human rights, which is the perfect strategy to express your denial. So if you're in a country of human rights, why would you care? Because there's no problem with human rights, you know? So that's the usual attitude of the dominant party, the dominant parties in general. So, for example, a few months ago, they decided to address the topic in some way, and the police unions were invited to discuss with themselves. So they were supposed to fix the problems between society and the police force, but nobody from the society was actually invited. So they said, oh, we are happy, we will continue as ever. But what is new here in this case is the fact that they are using the class action procedure. And I'm very happy because my organization launched a campaign to make this happen. Class actions so far was not a tool available in France for these kinds of topics. But you know, what we're talking about is not individual racism only, but systemic discrimination And if you want to prove that, you need figures, you need some groups, because you may always argue, oh, this person was controlled not because of his race or ethnicity, but because he did this and that, and it's very difficult to prove. But when you have a group, and a large group, it becomes obvious that this group was targeted not because of any individual behavior, but because of their collective ethnicity. So class action made things easier for the victims, and of course, that's the way to go. So we are very, very happy that this new tool that is now available after a campaign is more and more used by different organizations, not only for racism, by the way, but all kinds of discrimination, and even for environment or health or any kind of global topic.
Alex, Louis-Georges at the beginning said something very, very important, which I wanted to discuss with you as well, and that is about the fact that France would look at any other country in the world and say that it has moral authority over any other country because it respects human rights, at least in its own eyes, right? So how does one equal that? How does one justify that when even a child as young as 12, some cases are that children as young as 12 have been victims of this discriminatory form of policing?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think that you can justify that. And this is the main issue. The problem is also within the society itself, because the society isn't taking action, but it's accepting what's happening. The problem is also regarding the carte blanche given to some policemen, or to the police in general, but some policemen are abusing of this carte blanche in order to do their, what they call as a routine check when it comes to these minorities, to these, well, I would say ethnic minorities. And the problem in France is that we are not allowed in the public sphere to talk about ethnicity or racism issues as well. And this is a problem that needs to be solved before trying to justify what's happening.
So, Louis-Georges, I wanted to get your thoughts about that too, because a child, and I'm talking about the child because, in these cases of children, because that then goes to what you said, that this is not just one form of discrimination. It's not just racial profiling. It's also then, in fact, if we're completely honest, also then harming the rights of children in some ways. Because if you're discriminatory towards a child who is 12 years old, he or she will then grow up with a sense that he is or she is a second-class citizen.
Yes, of course. But because the country thinks that they are superior to anybody else because they have a country of human rights, they are just more arrogant than anybody else. That's the difference. Just to give you some examples, last year, a very serious newspaper called Mediapart made a revelation about a group on WhatsApp, or on Facebook, sorry, with more than 8,000 police people exchanging racist messages. A few days later, they came up with another group on Facebook with more than 9,000 racist policemen exchanging racist messages. Nothing happened. Nobody was, in fact, sent to court. Nobody was dismissed. The Minister of Internal Affairs said nothing. And that's the way to go. They are continuing as ever, business as ever. So that's really taboo. Race is not an issue in France, cannot be an issue. In fact, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Minister of Education, and other ministers as well have a whole campaign, not against discrimination, but against what they call separatism, which in fact is a way to target Muslim people. They keep speaking about Islamo-gauchist, meaning leftist, and Muslim people. They have tried to justify their campaigns making connections with terrorism, which are even more racist. So it's really terrible. I think there was an investigation that was made by an independent team of researchers, and they found out that starting from the 19th, so they identified that there was not a single week in France without a newspaper making its covered paper, the page, about and against Muslim people in particular. So there's not a single week without, a front page of a newspaper about Islam. So is Islam compatible with France? Is it democratic? Do they respect us? Are they like this? Are they like that? It's impossible to have any debate in France if it's not related in some way with Islam. So that is, I'm not Muslim myself, but to be honest, we have had enough of that situation.
Both of you are highly educated, so I'm wondering in academia, because I know you work at Sciences Po as well as a lecturer and research associate, is this a topic of discussion amongst academics? I mean, are there people around you who are concerned about this, even just within normal French society? And are there policies being at least, proposed to fix the situation?
Well, to be honest with you, when it comes, let's say, to studies regarding the Arab world or Islamic civilization in general, it's very rare to find someone who is Arab or Muslim who is considered as expert in the field as well. The same goes for sub-Saharan Africa, which is quite an issue for me, because you cannot have this, I would say, neo-colonialist vision regarding academia without having people coming from the region who know better what's going on, and I would say who are living the situation more than people who are just, who consider that they are analyzing it. So it's a big problem in academia because some people from these minorities are trying to raise their voice, but in front of them they have the whole administration, whether it's the academic one or the governmental one, against them. So it's quite a struggle for academia as well in this field.
We're going to have to leave that as our final word, but we really appreciate both Alex and Louis-Georges for taking their time out this Saturday to discuss this issue with us. We've discussed France quite a few times over the past year. In the context of Islamophobia. But, the issue of racism and discrimination in France is beyond just Muslims, even though that is certainly an important aspect. It affects Black people, people of color of all walks of life and faiths and ethnicities, certainly, and especially those within the banlieues. So, right, as Alex there had contextualized for us, society is seemingly okay with this sort of thing. And as Louis-Georges said, all the government has proposed so far and done so far is just to have the police themselves. I mean, which is, again, sort of a completely, default defeatist point of view, because you can't police yourself. You need to have some independent body to be able to actually look at this in a neutral fashion. The United Nations has spoken out about this form of policing and racial profiling, but will that sort of thing be enough? Does France even care what the international community says? We've already had Macron criticize the international community for criticizing his country, for daring to criticize his country and the way it treats its own Muslim citizens. I'll leave with her for now. I've been Waqar Rizvi. Thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf says India is using the Afghan soil for terrorism in his country. In an interview to an Indian journalist, Yusuf said India is involved in terror attacks in Pakistan, including the recent Lahore blast. On Afghanistan, Yusuf said Pakistan has no favorites and the Afghans have the right to choose their own government. Pakistan and China have expressed concerns over the deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan. In a press conference along with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said regional stability is linked with peace in Afghanistan. The two also discussed ways to further enhance economic defense and security cooperation. The Afghan government has imposed a nighttime curfew across 31 provinces to curb surging violence and limit the Taliban's movement. The Interior Ministry, however, said Kabul, Panjshir and Nangarhar provinces are exempted. Earlier, US and Afghan presidents said the Taliban's offensive contradicts their claim of supporting the Doha peace deal. Brazil has reported 1,300 new COVID-19 deaths and over 100,000 new cases in a single day. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 32 more lives and infected over 1,800 people overnight. Globally, there are more than 4.1 million fatalities and 193 million cases so far. Cricket, the Pakistan Super League's 7th season will be held in January and February next year. The Pakistan Cricket Board made the announcement after a meeting with the tournament's franchises. The PSL 7th is likely to begin in the first week of January 2021, with all fixtures planned on home soil. And in Tokyo Olympics, Team China has made a strong start on the first day with 3 gold medals and 1 bronze. Chinese shooter Zhang Qishan and weightlifter Hu Shihui claimed the first 2 gold medals, while fencer Sun Yiwen won the third later. Athletes from 8 other countries, including Japan, Italy and Iran, have also won gold medals. Well, these were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us.
What are 21st century skills?
Kids need to know that they can make mistakes, but when you start teaching young people coding, it changes their mindset.
We realize that a lot of what makes a good coder, it's how does that person solve the problems at work.
It's all about awareing parents that what's the future and what their kids needs to do.
Of the 16 top companies, 80% of all high-ranking executives at the top Fortune companies were all men. There's clearly a gap, and men are sort of falling into it.
Normalize the weakness, so to speak, of men that are not masculine according to whatever the stereotype.
What does healthy masculinity look like in your opinion?
That everyone is on the spectrum and of masculinity and femininity, and one has to just accept what one is.
Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf says India is using the Afghan soil for terrorism in his country. In an interview to an Indian journalist, Yusuf said India is involved in terror attacks in Pakistan, including the recent Lahore blast. He said talks with India are impossible until it revokes the unilateral aggressive actions it has taken in occupied Kashmir. On Afghanistan, Yusuf said Pakistan has no favourites and the Afghans have the right to choose their own government. To a question, he said Pakistan will seal the border with Afghanistan if the Taliban take over Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan says no amount of Indian propaganda can undermine the significance of the China-Pakistan economic corridor for regional prosperity. Responding to media queries, a Foreign Office spokesperson said the flagship project promises socio-economic uplift and regional connectivity. He also said India's role as a spoiler in Afghanistan is well established. He stressed that India's baseless allegations cannot divert attention from human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. The spokesperson also told India to stop peddling malicious propaganda and focus on course correction. Meanwhile, Indian forces have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youths were targeted during an operation in Bandipora Sumlar area. Occupation forces have blocked all entry and exit points of the area. The operation was going on till the last reports came in. The Indian troops have martyred over 400 civilians since New Delhi revoked Kashmir's statehood in August 2019. Pakistan and China have expressed concerns over the deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan. In a press conference along with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said regional stability is linked with peace in Afghanistan. The 2 foreign ministers stressed the need for a politically negotiated settlement in Afghanistan. Qureshi also apprised the Chinese counterpart of India's human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. They also discussed ways to further enhance economic, defense and security cooperation. The 2 reaffirmed their commitment to the timely completion of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. The 2 sides vowed to bring the perpetrators of the attack on Dhasu power plant to justice. Meanwhile, Pakistan says it has deployed armed forces at the frontline positions along with the border of Afghanistan. Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid Ahmed said the influx of refugees and entry of armed militants need to be contained. He said it is time that Afghan politicians and their military leadership learn to deal with issues. Talking to the media, Ahmed said the fight in Afghanistan is its internal matter. He added Pakistan is not taking any sides and has no favourites. There are 2 key crossings between Pakistan and Afghanistan apart from several small trading points. Pakistan has already fenced about 90% of the border with Afghanistan. Now, the Afghan government has imposed a nighttime curfew across 31 provinces to curb surging violence and limit the Taliban's movement. The Interior Ministry, however, said Kabul, Panjshir and Nangarhar provinces are exempted. An Interior Ministry spokesperson said the measure will be effective between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. local time. Since early May, the Taliban have launched a widespread offensive across the country, capturing border crossings and dozens of districts. Amid withdrawal of foreign forces, the Taliban now control about half of Afghanistan's roughly 400 districts. Earlier, US and Afghan president said the Taliban's offensive contradicts their claim of supporting the Doha peace deal. In a statement, the White House said Joe Biden assured Ashraf Ghani of diplomatic and humanitarian support to Kabul. President Biden also reaffirmed Washington's continued support to the Afghan military. The White House said Congress has been requested to approve $3.3 billion military aid for Kabul in 2022 defense budget. Now, Israeli forces have killed a Palestinian teenager and injured 320 others in the occupied West Bank. Hundreds had gathered to protest in multiple towns and cities against the illegal Israeli settlements. The Health Ministry says Mohammed Tamimi was killed in Nabi Saleh village northwest of Ramallah. The Palestine Red Crescent Society says occupation forces used tear gas, live fire and rubber-coated bullets. Meanwhile, the Israeli army says 2 soldiers were slightly injured in the clashes. About 475,000 Jewish settlers now live in the occupied West Bank, which Israel has occupied since 1967. Now, in Iraq's Kurdistan region, a drone attack has been carried out on a military base that hosts American troops. The US-led coalition said that no casualties or damage has been reported. The attack comes ahead of the Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi's expected meeting with the US President Joe Biden in Washington. The two are set to discuss a possible full troop withdrawal. The US still has around 2,500 troops in Iraq to fight ISIS. Most of the American troops deployed in the coalition were withdrawn under former President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, 3 Iraqi policemen have been killed in a suspected attack by the ISIS militants in northern Kirkuk province. Police said the gunmen attacked a federal police checkpoint in the Al-Rashad district southwest of the province. It said another policeman was injured in the attack. There has been no claim of responsibility for the attack. While ISIS militants have escalated their attacks in recent months, especially in the area between Kirkuk, Salahuddin and Diyala. Brazil has reported 1,300 new COVID-19 deaths and whooping 100,000 new cases in a single day. Globally, there are more than 4.1 million fatalities and 193 million cases so far.
Pfizer says the U.S. government has purchased 200 million additional doses to help with pediatric vaccination. Sydney will get 50,000 more doses of the vaccine this week to battle its worsening outbreak. Meanwhile, China has reported 35 new COVID-19 cases in the mainland, down from 48 cases a day earlier. Vietnam is extending a lockdown in Ho Chi Minh City until August 1st and imposing stricter restrictions in the capital, Hanoi. In Japan, Olympics organizers say one more athlete at the Tokyo Games had tested positive for COVID-19. They say Olympics-related cases rose by 17, bringing the total number of disclosed cases to 123. And in Europe, Germany is classifying Spain and the Netherlands as areas with a high incidence of coronavirus. Unvaccinated travelers returning from those countries will have to quarantine for at least 5 days.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 32 deaths from COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the virus has claimed nearly 23,000 lives so far. It says more than 1,800 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The country's positivity rate has declined to 4.89%. Pakistan has reported more than 1 million cases so far, with over 924,000 recoveries. There are around 54,000 active cases, of which more than 2,500 are critical. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, in India, authorities have started demolishing the settlement of Rohingya refugees living on the land near New Delhi. Indian government regards the Rohingya as illegal aliens and a security risk. The government has also ordered the identification and repatriation of the refugees. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya were forced to flee Myanmar after a crackdown by the military in 2017. The refugees have said the conditions are not conducive for them to return to Myanmar. According to UNHCR, around 40,000 Rohingya refugees now live in India, with nearly 16,500 having identity cards issued by the UN body. Still in India, where the death toll from landslides and flooding in the western state of Maharashtra has risen to 136. Torrential monsoon rains have also cut off hundreds of villages. Officials say 35 people were injured in rain-triggered landslides in 6 regions in Raigad district. The district collector said around 50 people are fear-trapped under the debris. Rescue crews have been racing to evacuate survivors. The country's weather agency says more heavy rains will continue to lash the state capital, Mumbai. Philippines authorities have evacuated thousands of residents of Manila as heavy monsoon rain flooded the capital city and nearby provinces. More than 2,900 residents have been taking shelter at an elementary school in the suburb of Marikina City. The residents were evacuated after a nearby river started overflowing from continued rains. In Cavite province south of Manila, Coast Guard personnel helped residents evacuate and carried out the elderly out of their homes. The National Disaster Agency said over 14,000 people, most of them from a flood-prone Manila suburb, had moved into the evacuation centers. As floods continue to devastate various regions, experts have warned governments to expect further extreme weather due to climate change. More details in this report. A Hong Kong-based climate expert, Johnny Chan, says the recent floods in both Germany and China were linked with climate change. He called on all governments across the world to take strong measures to prepare themselves against the global warming.
Governments should definitely consider global warming and its consequences, for example, in terms of flooding, to make sure that they will be the cities or the country will be able to adapt to these types of changes in the occurrence of extreme weather events.
Chan was speaking in response to the deadly floods that have upended life in both China and Western Europe in recent weeks. According to the Chinese state media, the death toll in Henan province due to flooding now stands at 56, with 5 people missing. China's extreme weather has seen tens of thousands evacuated and affected the lives of millions. This comes after floods killed at least 160 people in Germany and another 31 in Belgium last week. Meanwhile, voluntary crowdfunding efforts have raised over €30,000 for flood victims in Germany. At least 14 people have died, with 12 others injured in a warehouse fire in northeastern China. State media said rescue operation is underway while the cause of the incident is being investigated. In June, a fire at a martial arts school in Henan province killed 18 people. The fire prompted an online uproar, with Chinese social media users calling for better fire safety standards. China has imposed counter-sanctions on 7 U.S. individuals, including former Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. The retaliatory curbs are the first imposed by Beijing under its new anti-foreign sanction law. Beijing's foreign ministry said the U.S. concocted the Hong Kong Business Advisory to smear the territory's business environment. It noted Washington's curbs violate international laws. The ministry reiterated that any interference in Hong Kong's affairs will be futile. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the U.S. is undeterred by Beijing's actions. She said China's move illustrated the very risk about which the U.S. government had warned. The French Parliament has approved a bill that is widely criticized as xenophobic and Islamophobic. The so-called anti-separatist bill was approved by 49 votes to 19, with 5 abstentions. Far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon rallied against the law and called it anti-Muslim. He also introduced a motion to reject the bill, but it was opposed by the lawmakers. In a series of tweets, he said the provision would have risked distorting the French conception of secularism. The bill may have to pass the final hurdle of the Constitutional Council before becoming a law. The US and Russia have announced that their diplomats will hold talks on nuclear arms control on 28th of July. US Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman will travel to Geneva to lead the American delegation. The State Department says this meeting follows up on a commitment made between the US and Russian presidents. It said the two had agreed on a robust dialogue to lay the groundwork for future arms control and risk reduction measures. Moscow said Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov will head Russia's team. Ryabkov said his side plans to discuss all aspects of strategic stability and prospects for arms control. Moving on, Britain says Myanmar's military has appointed a new temporary head of its embassy in London. In a statement, the British Foreign Ministry said it had been notified of the move. The ministry said the selection of the new envoy did not require the consent of the British government, but the rights group has urged London not to recognise the interim representative appointed by the military. In a statement, the Accountability Project said it would be a gross double standard as a moral outrage. Myanmar's former envoy was locked out of the London embassy in April after calling for the release of their elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, Turkey has rejected the UN Security Council's statement over the reopening of the disputed Cyprus resort. The Foreign Ministry says such remarks are based on black propaganda by Athens and Greek Cypriots. In a statement, the ministry said Maraş is part of Turkish Cyprus and has not been open to settlement. It said Turkish Cyprus had declared the city a military zone as a goodwill gesture. It assured Ankara's decisions respect property rights and are in full compliance with international law. The ministry said, contrary to claims, the relevant UN Security Council resolutions are not violated. Disputed. Varosha has remained empty since August 1974, sealed off with barbed wire and no entry signs. Now, G20 energy and environment ministers have failed to reach a deal on climate targets. Italy's Minister Roberto Cingolani said there was a disagreement on the wording of key commitments in the communique. Talking to the media, he said the ministers could not agree mainly on two issues. One was phasing out coal power, which most countries wanted to achieve by 2025, but some said it would be impossible for them. The other concerned limiting global temperature increase to 1.52 degrees Celsius. Cingolani said the disputed issues will be raised in the Heads of State meeting in October. The failure to agree to common language is seen as a setback ahead of the UN climate talks in November. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Russia has asked Japan to fix the world map of Tokyo Olympics 2020 that shows Crimea as part of Ukraine. The Russian embassy to Japan said Crimea reunited with Russia after the 2014 referendum. In a Facebook post, the embassy said the referendum fully complied with international standards. It said Crimea is an inalienable part of Russia. The embassy called on the International Olympic Committee and the Tokyo Olympics Committee to correct the map. Now, in eastern Russia, a suspension bridge collapsed as a truck tried to drive across during severe floods. The bridge, made out of wood, was located in Urium village. As the truck reached the middle of the bridge, it started failing under the load. The driver was later reported to have survived, but the truck could not be recovered from the water. The suspension bridge was constructed in place of a road bridge that was destroyed in previous floods. Currently, the residents of Urium village do not have a way to cross the river after the accident. Now, in Australia, the environmentalists say they are disappointed over UNESCO's decision of not adding the Great Barrier Reef to a list of World Heritage Sites that are in danger. They call the decision by the UN body as terrible. Last month, UNESCO recommended the Great Barrier Reef be classified as in danger, but drew an angry response from Australia. After intensive lobbying by the country, a UN panel agreed on Friday to defer the vote until 2022. Environmental groups and scientists have criticized the decision, which they say is politically driven.
People of the world must be looking askance at what the politicians of Australia are doing, given that under the UNESCO treaty, Australian government promised to do its utmost to protect and conserve the Great Barrier Reef. And instead, what we have seen is a cynical lobbying exercise to try and hide the truth. It is a terrible look for Australia.
Now, in Peru, climbers have scaled the mighty Huascarán mountain to unfurl a massive flag near its peak. The group says the aim was to show unity in the politically divided country. Details in this report.
At 6,768 meters, Huascarán, in Peru's high summit, located in the province of Yangui, climbers battle thick snow and thin air to reach the top. And to make the feat even more difficult, more than 20 climbers helped carry towards the summit a massive Peruvian flag.
Never has this challenge project been done before, to take a flag that is 200 meters and which weighs 400 kilos to the most important peak in Peru, the Huascarán.
The flag was unfurled on the Huascarán mountain on July 12th, in time for the country's bicentenary celebrations on July 28th. Victor Rimac helped organize this expedition, hoping to unite the country after divisive presidential elections.
We started a project called Flag for the Bicentenary. This project commemorates 200 years of the country and for us to be able to unite Peru because the political situation has divided us a lot. So with this project, we have tried to unite Peruvians and send out a message of fellowship and hope.
The spectacular Mount Huascarán is named after the 16th century Inca leader Huasca. The ascent normally takes 21 days.
Now, in the Tokyo Olympics, Team China has made a strong start on the first day with 3 gold medals and 1 bronze. Athletes from 8 other countries, including Japan, Italy and Iran, have also won gold medals. Chinese shooter Yang Qishan and weightlifter Hu Shihui claimed the first 2 gold medals, while fencer Sun Yiwen won the third later. Hungarian fencer Aaron Szilágyi made Olympic history by winning the men's individual sabre event. Thailand's taekwondo flyweight queen Panipek Wongpata Nakit won her first Olympic gold by a hair. In cycling, Ecuador's Richard Carapaz produced a powerful late burst after a 6-hour slog to win gold in men's road race. Neo Hisa Dakato delivered the first gold medal of the Tokyo Games for the host nation by winning the men's 60 kg. Meanwhile, world champions Belgium beat the Netherlands 3-1 in the men's hockey tournament. In table tennis, Polish Olympian and Paralympian Natalia Bartyga cruised into the women's singles second round. And the Pakistan Super League 7th season will be held in January and February next year. The Pakistan Cricket Board made the announcement after a meeting with the tournament's franchises. The PSL is usually held during February and March every year, but the PCB is expecting Australia to tour Pakistan during that window. The PSL 7th is likely to begin in the first week of January 2022 with all fixtures planned on home soil. This year's edition started in February in Pakistan but was suspended the next month due to COVID-19 cases among staff and players. It was later completed in Abu Dhabi with the Multan Sultans crowned champions. And now let's have a look at how the weather is doing around the world. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.
मेरा नाम आसिफ तालिब है। 2006 में 14 साल की उम्र में मुल्तान से लाहौर में आया था। लाहौर आने से पहले मैं मुल्तान में पढ़ रहा था, तो बस कुछ घरेलू हालात इस तरह के हो गए कि मुझे मुल्तान से लाहौर आना पड़ा। पहले मैंने एक घर में काम किया, एक घरेलू मुलाजिम के तौर पे। सोचा कि अगर मैं घर में काम करूंगा सारी ज़िंदगी घरेलू मुलाजिम ही रहूंगा, क्यों ना मैं कोई ऐसा काम करता हूं जिससे मैं रिस्क ले सकूं और जितनी मेहनत करूंगा उतना उसका मुझे रिटर्न मिलेगा। कर्ज़ लेके रिक्शा लिया और जब लम्स के बाहर रिक्शा चलाने को मौका मिला तो मेरे लम्स के स्टूडेंट्स के साथ बहुत अच्छे तल्लुकात बन गए, लोगों के साथ दोस्तियाँ हुई। तो उन्होंने मुझे सारा इंग्लिश और सोशल मीडिया का इस्तेमाल और सारा सिखाया। जैसे मेरी इंग्लिश बेहतर हुई तो मैं फॉरेनर्स को लेके आता जाता था और सारे लाहौर के टूर्स कराता था। मुझे बचपन से शौक़ था कि मैं अपना काम करूं। लोक सवारी का आइडिया मैं फॉरेनर्स को लाहौर में घुमा रहा था, तो मेरा ख्याल था कि और लोगों को भी पाकिस्तान में आना चाहिए। लोक सवारी एडवेंचर एक डोमेस्टिक ट्रैवल एंड टूरिज़म कंपनी है। हम पाकिस्तान में टूर्स कराते हैं, क्योंकि जब फॉरेनर्स इधर पाकिस्तान में आते थे शुरू में तो बहुत डरे हुए, घबराए हुए, और जब वापस जाते थे तो इतना उनका दिल लग जाता था पाकिस्तान के साथ कि रोना शुरू कर देते थे। मैं अपनी अच्छी नीयत इस्तेमाल करता रहा, हलाल के रिज़्क कमाता रहा, तो बस वही मार्केट मेरी इस तरह से बनी कि आज अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह मतलब पूरी दुनिया में लोग मेरे साथ कांटेक्ट करते हैं मेरी ईमानदारी और भरोसे की वजह से।
host Nasreen Bukhari, bringing you the most exciting and latest news from showbiz world. Let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. We will be discussing a slight disappointment caused by Loki for the fans. Exciting review on the movie Back to the Future. How he indulges into his character in this movie.
There's a very interesting dynamic.
Matt talking about the setting of the movie. I mean, it's very captivating throughout.
Anna Kendrick's character, Catherine, who plays a PhD candidate.
Followed by a discussion on how the music festival can benefit the artist.
It wasn't without controversy when it was launched.
People are going to the cinema and they just want a bit of escapism. I don't think they want to see things that are too dark.
Exclusively the ability that he has mastered. Don't forget to share your feedback on the social media links mentioned down below. Stay tuned to find out more.
Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan.
Don't forget, most of the guys like Babar Azam, Fakhr Zaman, Shaheen Afridi, they already had an experience playing.
The match eventually to a point of penalties.
Guys like Raheem Sterling, John Stones. These are guys that have got the experience.
Djokovic, who was up 5-2, but Berrettini actually ended up taking the first set.
This would have been a more unstoppable victory for Max Verstappen.
Certainly. I mean, this would have been Verstappen's fourth in a row. As it is, it's his third in four. The one in Azerbaijan. Lewis could have ended up winning.
Chris Paul did it again, and it was pretty awesome to see him do it in front of his old home crowd in LA.
Talking about Phil Mickelson.
I can't believe he won the PGA Championship. I'm still thinking back to that moment. Truly incredible at age 50, winning.
Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid and these are the headlines. Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf says India is using the Afghan soil for terrorism in his country. In an interview to an Indian journalist, Yusuf said India is involved in terror attacks in Pakistan, including the recent Lahore blast. On Afghanistan, Yusuf said Pakistan has no favorites and the Afghans have the right to choose their own government. Pakistan and China have expressed concerns over the deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan. In a press conference along with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said regional stability is linked with peace in Afghanistan. Qureshi said Pakistan appreciates China's principled stance on Kashmir issue as well. The Afghan government has imposed a nighttime curfew across 31 provinces to curb surging violence and limit the Taliban movements. The Interior Ministry, however, said Kabul, Panjshir and Nangarhar provinces are exempted. Earlier, US and Afghan presidents said the Taliban's offensive contradicts their claim of supporting the Doha peace deal. Brazil has reported 1,300 new COVID-19 deaths and over 100,000 new cases in a single day. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 32 more lives and infected over 1,800 people overnight. Globally, there are more than 4.1 million fatalities and 193 million cases so far. And in cricket, the Pakistan Super League 7th season will be held in January and February next year. The Pakistan Cricket Board made the announcement after meeting with the tournament's franchises. The PSL 7th is likely to begin in the first week of January 2022, with all fixtures planned on home soil. And in the Tokyo Olympics, Team China has made a strong start on the first day with 3 gold medals and 1 bronze. Chinese shooter Yang Qi-hian and weightlifter Hu Shi-hui claimed the first 2 gold medals, while fencer Sun He-wen won the third later. Athletes from 8 other countries, including Japan, Italy and Iran, have also won gold medals. That's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news. Coming up next is program Coffee Table. Stay tuned.
And you're watching The Coffee Table, and as I'm sure you all, but we're here to kind of reiterate and give you all these wonderful nuggets of information. April is C-section Awareness Month all around the world, and we were thinking about this, and on one level we were thinking, but so many women have C-sections, and why do we need awareness about it? But the truth is that childbirth is often not as simple as we anticipate it to be, and there's a lot of baggage around a C-section that we thought it would be really interesting to unpack on the show today. So we're so excited to have 2 wonderful people who work with babies and work with their moms on the show, and I'm so excited to be welcoming Dr. Yusuf Lateef Khan, who is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the Rashid Lateef Medical Hospital. He's the founder member of the Society for Gynecological Endoscopy and is also a consultant OBGYN at Hamid Latif Hospital in Lahore. And we are also joined by Anam Malik, who is a distinguished graduate of the American Fitness Professionals Association, and she is the founder of Braxton Cakes, which is a program designed to help with the fitness, health, and nutrition of pre- and postpartum women. Yay! Welcome to the show, both of you. So I want to start with Dr. Yusuf, because I like to, begin at the beginning. So when we are talking about C-sections or cesareans versus vaginal births, what does a C-section entail?
Thank you, Meena. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Indus and, of course, you for inviting me over here.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. And I hope you don't have to deliver someone
making it
right now.
And making this month as a C-section, as we all know it, and you are the only one, I think, channel in Pakistan who's kind of taking it one notch up as usual. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
So you asked me what's the difference between a normal delivery and a C-section, I suppose. And to put in a nutshell, this pregnancy is a beautiful journey. And once you start with that, and in the journey, there's a lot of hurdles which come up, and it is how you cope with them. And it ends at the time of the delivery. And of course, we have only two routes to deliver, either by the normal delivery and by a C-section. And it's the desire of the doctor and the parents and everybody around us that we need to have a healthy mother, we need to have a healthy baby at the end.
Yeah.
So there are certain things which we have to understand. Okay, you have to listen to your doctor who you're going to, number one.
Yes.
How he or she kind of perceiving you and taking you along. And you have to kind of weigh their judgment as well out. And of course, there's also the vicious part of the patient and the attendants, and the sasuma also comes in. So all of these kind of will combine. They're all going to combine down, and they will come out with but in the end, do remember that the objective of the result is the same in all of the cases, which is to have, mashallah, have a healthy baby and a healthy mother in the end. So the difference between a C-section and normal delivery, if you ask me what people come, the normal delivery takes about 10 hours to play around, and then you finally end up with this thing, while a section hardly takes about 30, maybe 40 minutes done, and you're done. And most of the time, you have a general or a spinal anesthesia, you don't even feel that, and the mother hands over the baby. But that is just the start of the story, not the end of it. It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's not only the hospital stay, which kind of only varies for a couple of days, but it's a lifelong journey which you have to go through yourself and the baby, and what have you decided at that time.
Yes.
As a human nature, we do agree. We are not in the mood to have any kind of pains for whatever reasons we think so. But in this century, if a patient is kind of worried about the contractions or the pains or whatever, but they all can be managed in a manner which is befitting for that particular patient.
Absolutely. I think it's a really it's really important that you've mentioned here that in this century, pain should be a manageable thing. And there are so many options for expectant mothers to choose how to manage their own birth journey. And I think that's often when we talk about women in healthcare, it can be quite sort of problematic and fraught. And I'm glad that you mentioned in-laws, because I think that in a lot of South Asian cultures, and I'm sure this happens in other cultures as well, there is a lot of interference from relatives as well, and a birth journey is not necessarily only about the parents and the baby, which ideally it should be. But this is where, Anam, I want to come to you. And we often refer to vaginal births as normal deliveries, because that's just sort of how we kind of casually say it. And also, I think people are squeamish about saying the word vaginal. But do you think that it also reflects a certain kind of social or cultural idea that people have about vaginal births versus C-sections? Like there's something not normal about a C-section?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so first up, like for me personally, and I say this to a lot of women, I have an issue with the term normal delivery to begin with. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying vaginal. It should be a very normal, healthy part of, our vernacular. Whether you deliver vaginally or you deliver through cesarean, women need to understand that regardless, as Dr. Latif also mentioned, that the ultimate goal is the same, right? It's to safely deliver a baby and with, the same outcome, a healthy baby and a healthy mother. Yes, there are a lot of pain-free methods to delivery now, but I feel like everywhere in the world, there are two distinct schools of thoughts when it comes to delivering through cesarean. Right. One is that there is a lot of pride that is associated with delivering vaginally. That's why we refer to it as delivering normally.
Yes.
And the other is the fear of delivering vaginally. So there is some women will opt for cesarean because they believe that, okay, that's going to be, that's a quick fix. Whereas there are other women who will believe that, okay, I want to try really hard for the vaginal because I don't want to do the quick fix and I want to do things the normal way. And I feel like both schools of thought is a little bit problematic because women need to understand that, these options are there for your own health and safety.
Yes.
And sometimes certain circumstances, yes, I understand that, some women opt for it and that's fine. That should be their choice. The way that you deliver should be your own choice. As long as you have all the medical advice and everything to back you up.
Yeah.
But women need to understand that sometimes the mode of delivery is completely out of your hands. Sometimes real emergency situations do occur.
Yes.
If we look at cesarean births, they've actually been happening for years, centuries even.
Centuries,
if you look at before I was reading centuries. Motherhood Maternity Center recently they published this article in which they talked about cesarean, the method of the cesarean delivery dating back to, you didn't even have anesthesia, but women were still, there was but they were still, cutting the woman up, taking the baby out. That stuff was happening, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like now medical science is so much more advanced. We have less maternal deaths, less infant deaths. We have a lot more care for a woman. Yes. But I don't think that no matter how a woman delivers, there should be this sense of empowerment associated with the type of birth. No matter how you deliver, you should feel empowered. You give birth to a baby. It doesn't matter how you did it, and because I feel like there's so much guilt associated with the cesarean as well for a lot of women that they feel like it was a type of failure. So
absolutely.
I would really like to,
I want
to see that change.
Yes, and I want to kind of back to that. But since we're sort of still at the beginning, Dr. Yusuf, could you tell us the sort of main reasons why one would need to opt for a cesarean? Because I know that there are hard reasons and there are soft reasons, and I'm just curious about what those reasons usually are.
All right. Before I get back to this, Mina, I would say that while Anna was speaking about the cesarean section when it started off,
yes,
you do remember that at that time, the C-section meant there was 100% mortality of the mother.
Yes, absolutely.
So once the C-section was done, the mother was done. It was just done for the baby to come out and maybe save that baby at that time.
Yes.
But now the things have changed, at least from that period of time. As I was going through the statistics all over the world, the percentage of C-section in all over the world is around 15%.
Yes.
And, the lowest C-section rate all over the world, where it is? During this century, it's in Africa.
Yes, I knew that. It's in sub-Saharan Africa. And the highest rate, I think, is in the United States. I wrote it down.
No, it's the Mexico and it's in Turkey, which goes as it does. Yeah.
So clearly there needs to be a balance between too many C-sections and too little C-sections also, because clearly that means that in, let's say, sub-Saharan Africa, why do there need to be more C-sections?
Why? Because their mortality and morbidity rate of the mother and the baby is sky high. So they don't have the facilities. They don't have any. Most of the deliveries are not done in the hospital settings. They're done at home.
Yes.
And the person who's kind of getting them, they are not trained to do a C-section. So they just wait out and see, and whatever happens. So that's kind of a dilemma which they're kind of living into, that kind of. And as a result of this, they have the highest what we call VVF, which is kind of a fistula which happens after a C-section, which is a devastating disease as such itself, which is the highest again going back to Africa. But this is the same thing which happens in Pakistan, even in our Sindh provinces and in other certain areas where you don't have this kind of facilities available. So that we have to keep that in mind. And if we go by Pakistani views, in 1990s, our C-section rate was only 3.2%, while in 2018, it has gone up to 20% now.
Okay. So
and it is all over the Pakistan. It's not only...
So that's all of Pakistan. It has increased by almost, let's say, I think 17%. My maths is very basic. So, Dr. Saab, is that a good thing that C-sections have increased, that the rate has increased?
Done for the right cause, it is perfectly fine. But if it is done just for the heck of it, I don't think so that's fair enough on anybody.
Yes.
So again, coming back to your question, what are the indications for a C-section or not? If I look at it grossly, there can be a reason from the maternal side, and there can be reason for the baby side as well.
Right.
So coming from the maternal side, if she has previous 2 C-section, then there is no chance of having her the 3rd normal delivery. She can have a normal delivery or vaginal delivery after 1 C-section, but not after 2, because then the complications of this vaginal birth after C-section, it increases. So they don't kind of pursue that.
Yes.
And secondly, you have to look at this thing like CPD, which is called pelvic disproportion. That means the pelvis is not good enough to allow this size of the baby to kind of deliver easily or comfortably. In that size, we say when the baby is on the good size or not. The other thing which comes up is all the medical disorders. If they have like diabetes and hypertension, that is not the absolute contraindication, but they come out to be relative. If they can be controlled and can be manageable, they can have delivered normally. So as this list goes on, and of course, fetal distress is one of the things which do occur at the time of the labor, when you can diagnose that the baby is not feeling well or it has to be taken out as quickly as possible, so it can be managed in the nursery. So they kind of then come in. So keeping all of this scenario in, it's long. So all of these things, they can be monitored and then verified. Once the patient comes to me, especially the primaries, which means the one who are giving the first one, that first baby delivery, that is one of the most important because that's gonna prevent at that time. And you have to actually, during the prenatal period, explain to the patient how those time will pass through. If the patient knows this is going to happen to me, then most of them, they kind of accept that and then can continue. If they are in a blind way, then normally they kind of panic and they say, it's been 4 hours, 5 hours or 8 hours. We've seen labor going up to 18 hours even but they deliver at the end, it's fine. But then you need to have patience. One of the things which our patients kind of missing these days is patience. They want to have a ready or shortcut for everything, which you can't find in this. This will take time. This will come on its own. Then we can decide how to move on and how to go about it.
Right.
So you need to have a good relationship between yourself and the patient as well. So they can understand each other. So you're in a comfort zone. They can talk to each other and then decide how to think. When the patient comes to me and say, Dr. Saab, aap mera unnecessarily section, won't do that. I tell them, it's not going to me going to decide about your C-section. It's going to you, because you're the one I'm going to tell you the pros, the cons, and it's up to you. If you say you want to have this thing done, that's perfectly fine. I'll kind of manage you if we're in that perfect zone. If we're not in the safe zone, it is my duty to make sure I can bring you back there and have a healthy baby and a healthy baby.
Absolutely. And then I think that's so important that, safety. And of course, to quote Hamlet, the readiness is all. And we're going to take a very quick break on this literary note, and we'll be back in a flash. Stay with us.
The new US administration has been asking the BJP government to begin to clean up its act in occupied Kashmir. So how far is this correct?
I think India has been criticized in international forums.
It was a complete failure because even in Modi's own admission, he said, Dil ki duriyan hai.
Given an option, would you stay or would you also leave?
As an educated Afghan and as someone who wants to decide the future of this country, I would choose to stay here.
Do you think that at the end of the day, it's going to be the same policy?
The big difference really is going to be where they separate from the United States.
How many attacks have the Iranians mounted against the Israeli infrastructure?
It's very noisy, and usually we have the information that have been shared by the Israeli government.
Welcome back to the coffee table. We're having a fascinating conversation about C-section Awareness Month, which is this month, April. And it never fails to amaze me how easy childbirth can be, but also how fraught and complicated at the same time. And I'm so happy to be having this conversation with OBGYN Dr. Yusuf Lateef Khan and Anna Malik, who is a pre- and postnatal fitness expert. So before the break, Dr. Saab, we were talking about being prepared for your birth and also about how we are sort of focusing on the safety of a mom. And it basically means that even now, childbirth and the process of birthing a baby is still really unpredictable. Like anything can happen. And for that, you need to have a certain rapport with your doctor and to have information to understand the process. And I think it's really interesting and important that you mentioned that patients come to you and they ask you about an unnecessary C-section. And that's also something that comes up often when we talk about C-sections and how people perceive them, is that there's an idea that a lot of C-sections were not required, but they still happened. So why do you think patients feel like that?
Because it's, again, the communication gap. I totally agree with that. I think it's the way they were told what happened. You know, I don't know if I've been saying that on the television or not, when we were kind of working in government setup, getting training. And we used to go to the labor room, and there was time when sometimes someone would come in, take this one for C-section, take this for normal delivery, and the patient was just lying there and didn't know what was happening to her. And at that stage, there was so much of chaos and so much of patients around, you didn't have time to sit down with them and communicate and tell them what that. And that's very unfortunate. And by the end of the day, you go back to them and ask them, why was your C-section done? And they were in a kind of a blackout. We didn't know. The doctor came and said, okay, do a C-section. And that's it. So, but now it is time that everyone has to realize this thing. Everyone has the right to understand what is going on and how to go about it and why it is being done. And they have to have the they say in it as well.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most of the cases when we are doing that, and I go and consult somebody for whatever, normal delivery or C-section, and she unfairly, the patients, she says, okay, Dr. Saab, can I call my mother-in-law? Can I call in my husband? Can I call in whatever, XYZ? You can explain them to them and then they can decide.
Yeah.
I always tell them the first decision has to be yours.
Yes.
Then, of course, you can get a suggestion from anybody you want.
Yeah.
But first one, it has to be you because it is you. It is you which is going to go through this process. And do remember that, again, as I was telling you, C-section is not only for about 30 minutes or so, it's a lifelong thing which has no impact on you.
Absolutely. And it's
not going to be over in you.
No, and it's just, it's really frustrating. And I think just tragic on so many levels about how women do not feel like they can make decisions about their own bodies. And Anam, when you get clients at Braxton Cakes, do you feel like a lot of women grapple with that as well? Because I feel like on one level, with childbirth, you kind of, it's sort of like somebody else has literally taken over your body. So you already feel like you are sort of external to this process, this mysterious process that's just happening willy-nilly, and you can't do anything about it. And then you have, this sort of stress about how you're going to birth this baby. And do you feel like a lot of women are really nervous about it? Do you think it comes from a place where as women aren't encouraged to think of their bodies as their own to begin with, and then when you are pregnant, it sort of adds on a whole nother level of anxiety? I realize I've asked you like 1,000 things.
No, that's okay. I'll address them all at once. But I think yeah, you're right. Absolutely. That is an issue. But I also feel like, and scaling back to what was being discussed earlier as well, I think more than anything, especially because I feel like I see the fear most in first-time moms. And I think the main reason for that is that the options are not explained to them beforehand. So a lot of women go in like, yes, things have changed now. We have, we can do research online. We have a lot of more information available to us. But that's still very different from actually being told that, okay, look, these are your options.
Yeah.
And if these options don't play through, these are the risks, but this is how we will deal with those risks.
Yes.
So like, for example, a lot of girls, most girls who come to me, they want to, try for vaginal delivery. And they come to me saying that, look, we want the chances for us to deliver vaginally to be high. And, the recovery from a surgery, et cetera, can be problematic. We don't want to do that. But a lot, and so I always explain to them that, okay, that's great. And like, as long as all goes well, you will get to have a successful vaginal delivery. But in case you are unable to, for whatever reason, just speak to your doctor once, get your options out there, understand what your options are. I always tell them, because they keep asking me things about, okay, so what hospital, what doctor, what will the ward look like? So, like literally some girls, I actually, what I've realized is that since maternal health generally is so neglected, I have had clients in their early 30s who have actually never been to a gynecologist, so they don't even know the first thing about what's going to happen. They've never had a pap smear. They've never had any kind of
that's ridiculous.
Check before. So
that's
lot of women,
because,
it's ridiculous, right?
Because you have to see a gynecologist for your general well-being and health, and it has no bearing on whether you are sexually active or married or not. It's just...
So when they get pregnant, when these women get pregnant, they're clueless about where to start and what to expect, so and like I mean, for instance, like I have spent these past couple of years really educating myself and trying to get more and more knowledge in this realm. But over 6 years ago, when I had my first child, I didn't even know that you could have a cesarean awake. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I didn't. So after an entire day of labor, I was wheeled into an emergency C-section at like 9.5 2.5 centimeters dilation. So there was literally,
so close.
I was literally done.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there was like, it was a whole other complicated scenario, and I was waiting to be knocked out. And when they told me that, no, you have epidural, we're just going to kind of,
we'll
cut you open.
Yeah.
That gave me a very serious panic attack, So I feel like explain to, like, women need to be told what their options are. They need to be told that, okay, listen, this is the process. These are your options. These are the probabilities of what might happen. And then they need to be given advice about, okay, no matter how you're delivering, and this is a thing I've noticed as well, that some women, if they're opting for a C-section, they assume that the same kind of fitness level or that same kind of work towards that most pregnant women want isn't required for a cesarean.
Yes.
And I feel like that's also really, really strange to me, because no matter how you're delivering, your body needs that same amount of preparation physically, mentally, in terms of what you're eating, in terms of how mobile you are. Your recovery as well is equally important, whether it was vaginal or whether it was cesarean.
And
so
in some respects,
I think that,
And in some respects, I meant that recovery from a C-section is probably slightly more complex than a vaginal birth because, given that you don't have excessive tearing or any other sort of complications, but a C-section is major abdominal surgery. There's no two ways about that. And recovery from that will probably naturally be different to a vaginal birth.
It's and that's the thing, right? That's why I try to tell women that, it's not, don't feel less empowered or don't feel guilty because you ended up with a C-section. It's actually, a C-section is a very major abdominal surgery. So when I think about it, I think that, like, okay, if someone has gone in for, say, an abdominal surgery of some other kind, or you've gone in for heart surgery, you've gone in for any type of surgery.
Yeah, like your appendix out or something.
Period. You have rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have rehab, you have recovery, you have a rest time. Whereas over here, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, it was just, it's just a C-section. You go home with your baby and you're expected to, like, just get up and continue life as normal. Women need to understand, and they need to, and I feel like this is changing, and more women do understand this now, that it's a huge toll on your body, but there are ways to kind of make your body stronger before and after, and you do need to understand that it's not just because the whole world has, all the women in the world have been having children. That doesn't mean that, it's any, like, it's just something you should just, accept and move on. No,
yeah,
back, give yourself,
everybody does it.
Yeah, cut yourself
some
slack. Everybody, and I feel like a lot of women are told this, especially over here. Yeah, a lot of women are told this over here that, oh, bache to sab paida karte hain. So I'm just like, no, it's not about the fact that everyone gives birth. It's the fact that you gave birth. And that is a huge thing. And you need to understand that, right?
Absolutely.
So, and feel like empowered, about the changes your body just went through.
No, absolutely. So, it's massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. And I'm really glad you brought it up. Because, Dr. Saab, do you also feel like you get, and we keep talking about mothers-in-law, parents, so let's just say other relatives who do kind of have this approach to women and their family giving birth, that a lot of times C-sections aren't seen as a real birth, as if somehow it was like an easy way out of a vaginal delivery. Do you feel like there's that sort of bias?
Yeah, definitely there is, and you do need to remember, as Anna was saying, I just want to add one point to that. That is, they don't have to be physically, they have to be mentally prepared for this as well.
Yes.
And that's the portion which we're missing. It's not only the physical fitness which is going to get you through that. It's a mental thing. You need to be mentally as well prepared for everything. And you can only be prepared if you know what's happening.
Yeah.
So that part, antenatally or even pre-pregnancy part, that is very important part. Is to come back to that.
Yeah.
And coming back to your question, yes, of course, as I said, in 1990s, our C-section rate was only about 3% or so.
Yeah.
So most of the mother-in-laws and all that, they've been delivered normally, and they believe If we can deliver, then normally why can't my babu can do that?
Exactly. Or if I could deliver without an epidural, then well, you can do it too. Like, it's fine. And a lot of times I find it like really personally galling. It didn't happen to me, thankfully. But a lot of times, like, parents will, moms or mums-in-laws will come in and say that, well, she's not allowed to have an epidural. Like, why? How you don't get to decide that? Yes. Please continue.
So it is the kind of comparing themselves. If we can do it, then why can't this lady or this girl or can we do that? But they have to understand in those times, I'm sure at that time there was no air conditioning around in the whole of Pakistan, right? So, but now you can't bear to sit down in any other offices without an air conditioning.
Yeah.
So it's not a necessity. It's there, and you can't.
It makes our life better.
Do that. And so, of course. And so in this century, there are a lot of other things which can help you out in that. And that is the way you need to kind of counter. Then again, it comes down. There are a lot of times the mother-in-laws has come to me and said, Kiji, Dr. Sahib, you have to convince her that she needs to have a normal delivery or not. So I do have a pep talk with the mother-in-law. I do have a pep talk with my patient. But in the end, I try to explain to the mother-in-law as politely as I could, okay, it is her choice. Yeah. Let her decide. Let's see how things work. Let's cross the bridges as they come.
Yes.
But we need to give her space as well. We can't impose everything on her.
Absolutely.
And the other thing which comes with the complication of this thing, as we have increasing number of babies in Pakistan, the increasing number of C-section causes problems as well.
Yes.
There's a difference of complication in the first C-section, in the second one, and it goes sky high in the third one, in the fourth one. You never know what can happen to them.
Yeah.
So
it gets progressively more complicated to have a healthy baby and a healthy mother with the amount of C-sections that a mother is undergoing.
If you go to the Europe side or America side, they only have one or two child, and that's enough. But in our family, they need to have 2 sons, 2 daughters, and I don't know how
an
many
extra.
So an extra for a backup plan. I don't know what they're planning for, but still. So once they come in, we have to keep that also in our mind and tell our patients.
Yeah.
If you only want to have 1 child, 2, 9, chalo, that's okay. But you do remember that if you have a C-section, your obstetrical history totally changes. And then your management will also change in the future as well.
Absolutely.
So we do need that. It's not only those 30 minutes first and you're done with that. It's not only that.
It's a lifetime decision. Yeah, it's absolutely. Absolutely, and that also really means that a C-section, whilst at many turns is a very necessary and life-changing and life-saving procedure, it's also a procedure that is a very carefully considered and carefully undertaken one. We're going to take a very quick break and come back in 1 second. Stay with us.
My name is Malak Faisal. I am 12 years old and I am the first Pakistani figure skater. I started skating at the age of 4 as a hobby for about 4 years, and then I took it more professionally. I study in the 6th grade. Of course, managing between figure skating and school is very hard, but if you have the right time management, you can do both very easily. Although this sport is very expensive, my parents never let me down and supported me all through it. I participated in many events such as international and national competitions. One of the competitions that I won was in Innsbruck, Austria, where I won gold against 23 other skaters. Of course, my friends and family were very proud, and I was very happy about that win. My recent visit was to Malam Jabba and Gilgit, where we conducted 2 camps with about 240 skaters. I am very happy to see more kids joining the sport. They have potential, and I hope the sport grows. My dream is to represent Pakistan and hold up the Pakistani flag in the coming Junior World Championships.
Welcome back to the coffee table and welcome back to this show about C-Section Awareness Month, which is this month of April. Hopefully when you see this as a rerun, you'll still think about that. We are talking to OBGYN Dr. Yusuf Lateef Khan and pre- and postnatal fitness expert Anam Malik about C-sections and what do they entail, and how a C-section is something that is also something that you live with, and it takes a physical toll on your body, which you can of course recover from safely and in a well-managed way. But there's also an emotional toll that it takes. And Anam, because you work with a lot of moms who are, before their babies and after their babies, like, do you feel that there's still a long way to go for us in developing a healthier approach to childbirth for moms? Like, it's still something that a lot of moms struggle with.
I think it's changing slowly and steadily. I think if we were to talk about a healthy approach to like your pregnancy and postpartum period, I think that today a lot more women, like before when I initially started, there were questions about, okay, you have this program for pregnancy and postpartum. Yeah. Is it safe? What does it entail? So there wasn't much. Yeah. The only thing we really had was yoga, right? So there was a little bit of apprehension when I would explain to them, no, what I do is not yoga. So, there's a little bit more to that. We strengthen, different parts. We strengthen your body.
Yeah, and I think this whole idea of
an entire kind of pregnancy.
Yeah,
program.
And
so there was,
Sorry, yes. Yeah, I was saying that even this whole idea about how pregnant women can be strong, even that I think is really revolutionary, because everyone's like, oh my God, if you're pregnant, you have to like sit on the sofa all day long. Or once you've had a baby, then also you must kind of really just take it easy. And that there's, these are the things that you should not be doing. But then even with like C-sections, you have a scar, but you're also like nursing your baby and you're holding your baby and you're doing all of these things, and you need to be strong for that. Like you can do both the things together.
And it does it like, and I feel like, I think it's great that this is changing now, because now I have girls who reach out to me and they're just like, yes, I want a really strong pregnancy and I want a healthy pregnancy and I want a fast recovery. And I've been doing this for long enough to know that the more women who have focused throughout their 9 months on strength training, the better. Not only like the mode of delivery aside, their recovery has been a lot better and a lot faster, and that is irrelevant to how you delivered. Yes. So whether you delivered vaginally, whether you delivered through cesarean, if you've had a strong pregnancy, you will. There's a great chance that you will have a very strong postpartum as well. Yeah. So it's a major abdominal surgery, a cesarean. Yes, we already know that. But if you have strengthened your body, your recovery will be quicker. It is. I know that we were talking earlier about like women who opt for a cesarean because they don't want to go through the pain of a vaginal delivery. And I understand that does exist. Yeah. But, the thing for me, which is like baffling for me on that front, is that a cesarean can be equally painful, so like in terms of like, you may not feel it in the time. But right after the surgery, the recovery is it's longer, it's slower. So it's not that I just, what I try to tell women is that don't look for the quicker fix or the less just try and focus on being healthy throughout your pregnancy, being strong. And just, just leave the mode of delivery to nature and your doctor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's that baby come out of you one way or another. The mode of delivery is not always in your hands. But what is in your hands is strengthening your body. What is in your hands is being, as Dr. Yusuf even mentioned earlier, is being mentally prepared for the fact that you are going to have this baby. And I think that a lot of more women understand this. And now, before there was a lot of fear postpartum about how to get back to like a fitness program, how to kind of get back to even daily life. There was a lot of postpartum depression that was associated with it. And I would see a lot more with cesarean women because, with the cesarean, you're kind of, it's a little bit difficult for you to kind of be as up and about, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I feel like those women would suffer from PPD a little bit more. But I feel like now, 6 weeks in, because 6 weeks is the time that I give, is 6 weeks in, they're back. They're like ready to come back, and by week 8, 9, they're like, no, I feel ready. Telling them that you're lifting your baby already every single day, right?
That's
you're
heavy.
bending over
Heavy baby.
to like change your baby. You're crouching to like, you're doing so. It shouldn't be. I feel like when I think about like Cesarean Awareness Month, and whatever I've tried to talk to women about this before, I just want them to stop obsessing about the mode of delivery, because I feel like so much stress comes with that, and it really, really does actually affect you, especially afterwards as well. I would want more and more women to just do their research, speak to their doctor, know their options, know that sometimes your birth plan is not going to go the way you had hoped or you had expected, and that's okay. And it's really, really perfectly fine. It does not matter. And so as long as you're prepared, you have, and you're mentally and physically prepared, it shouldn't matter how you delivered.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. But Dr. Yusuf, do you feel like there's still a kind of distrust with patients and doctors? Because, there's this idea that doctors prefer to do C-sections because it's quicker, or that you don't have to wait. Like we talked about in the first segment, how on average, a normal labor can take anywhere between 4 to like 13 hours, which is really just normal. This just happens. It's expected. But there's this these are common perceptions about C-sections. The doctors like to hurry you up and then just do a C-section, or that they get paid more. That's why they want to do more C-sections, or that hospitals encourage it. So do you think that these are sort of myths or misperceptions that develop distrust between patients and their doctors?
Yes, they definitely do. And these are being in the market round, and the people have been even sued for these kind of things. So one of the things which we in our hospital do is our fee for a C-section and a normal delivery is same. So they can't come and tell me,
yes, you were trying to make a quick buck.
Out of that. So that is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yes, coming at odd hours and doing all this, that is part and parcel of the profession which we have chosen.
Yeah.
And because we love it so much, we have to do it for our own sake, for our patient's sake, and for everybody. And we've been doing it, I don't know. My father has been doing it, I don't know for how long. And it's about maybe 5, 7 or 8 years down the road, he stopped doing that. But still, we are the one who's kind of taking his legacy on and kind of doing that. Absolutely. So, yes, there are taboos and all of these things. Mina, as I said, you need to build up trust between your doctor and yourself. You just can't do that. You have to have that. And it is the same way like a husband and wife or anybody else's relationship, I would say that. And sometimes they are so even close, they talk so much about it, they don't even share to about anybody else, even their spouses, their things which they would not like to talk about that. So we are in a closed net and once the patient comes to us, and it's a whole family kind of thing. We kind of try to make it in a manner to make sure that this journey kinds of ends in a smoother, happier, and whatever the objectives are, we kind of achieve that. Absolutely. So money part, I'm sure that people do blame that, but I don't personally believe that's the most on the top of the list. Convenience, yes, it might happen, but anybody who comes to obstetrician and gynecology, they come with this baggage on with themselves. They know they have to leave a party to come to here. In the middle of the night, they have to come up and do that. And I know my wife, she sometimes, she has never claimed blame me for anything or kind of claimed anything, but in the middle of the night, if the phone rings, it has to ring. She can't say it's kind of because she understands. And it's all of this kind of family thing which comes up. And then it's a beautiful profession to have, and I'm so proud of a part of it.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph, and thank you so much, Anum, for being with me on the show today. And I think that it is such a wonderful note to end on, that OBGYNs knew what they were getting into when they chose to specialize in this field, and they love what they do. And it's really not that nobody's trying to make a quick buck off of your body. And I think that one really important takeaway from this is that your body is your own, and you are allowed to make decisions about your body and about your well-being and your baby's well-being, and that this is such a wonderful experience, and the readiness is all really, and there is so much information out there, and there's so much support out there for pregnant women and their families to be able to have the best possible experience, to have a healthy mom and a healthy baby. You can all have a really good life. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye now.
regional peace. How important is that as well?
Regional countries try to evolve regional strategy to bring peace to Afghanistan.
Children there are sometimes, directly targeted. Is that the same case in Kashmir?
Absolutely correct. It's very well known and well established, the targeted of children.
How much is our human rights abuses towards the Iraqi people?
Where is this love for human rights and democracy that the West is proud of? People who are not British or American have very little value, sadly.
This silence on the part of the international community when it comes to actually children's rights, what do you make of that?
Basically, international law is not implemented.
Framing of this letter, which I found again interesting, beyond just obviously the call to stop strikes in non-combat zones.
No usage of force for extrajudicial killing is legal. Unless it's absolutely necessary as a law enforcement mechanism, which is, and domestically, there is no space for that.
Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid and these are the headlines. Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf says India is using the Afghan soil for terrorism in his country. In an interview to an Indian journalist, Yusuf said India is involved in terror attacks in Pakistan, including the recent Lahore blast. On Afghanistan, Yusuf said Pakistan has no favorites and the Afghans have the right to choose their own government. Pakistan and China have expressed concerns over the deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan. In a press conference along with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said regional stability is linked with peace in Afghanistan. Qureshi said Pakistan appreciates China's principled stance on the Kashmir issue. The Afghan government has imposed a nighttime curfew across 31 provinces to curb surging violence and limit the Taliban's movement. The Interior Ministry, however, said Kabul, Panjshir and Nangarhar provinces are exempted. Earlier, US and Afghan presidents said the Taliban's offensive contradicts their claim of supporting the Doha peace deal. In France, thousands of people protested against COVID-19 restrictions and vaccinations in central Paris. Meanwhile, a large number of Australians also participated in anti-lockdown protests in Sydney, defying public health orders. In Pakistan, authorities have declared COVID-19 vaccination certificates mandatory for domestic air travel. Globally, there are more than 4.1 million fatalities and 193 million cases so far. And in Tokyo Olympics, Team China has made a strong start on the first day with 3 gold medals and 1 bronze. Chinese shooter Yang Qian and weightlifter Hu Zihui claimed the first 2 gold medals, while fencer Sun Yiwen won the third later. Athletes from 8 other countries, including Japan, Italy and Iran, have also won gold medals. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.
Hello and welcome to my show Indus Cuisine, and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. We're back with a new episode from the heart of Pakistan. Today's recipe is very interesting, and this recipe is a household favorite. And when I say a household favorite, I am not joking. This recipe is made in every house in Pakistan around all the 4 provinces, including Sindh, Punjab, Kashmir, KPK and also Balochistan. We're making chicken ka lal salan. It's a basic gravy that is enjoyed in every household, but let me tell you one thing. When we say basic, it's still not that basic. Why? Because it is delicious and it is out of this world. There is no guarantee where this recipe originated from, but as one can understand that this recipe has been a part of every household since every grandmother was a child also. Why? Because everyone knows how to make this, and this is the first thing a student would also make, a Pakistani student, when they go abroad to study, because it is delicious. And you can have this with rice, naan bread or pita bread, and roti also. Roti is basically a flat bread, like you could say a tortilla, which is made out of wheat flour, and it is cooked on open flame or on a tawa. A tawa is basically a pan made out of steel, raw steel, and you just put your bread on that, you could say the naan bread on that, which is raw, and then you cook it. So now, what are the ingredients of this recipe? It's very, very simple. You need around 2 onions, you need 3 tomatoes. I have more over here. Why? Because I always keep some for the backup. Then you need around 1.5 kilograms of chicken with bone. Remember, this recipe will be made with bone. If you do not have the bone chicken, then you cannot make this. This recipe is made with chicken. It was made with chicken, and it will be made with chicken. If you want to replace it with beef and mutton, you can, obviously, but traditionally this is the way it has been cooked for the past, you could say, 100 years. Why? Because if a grandmother is 90 years old in Pakistan, she also remembers when she used to eat it as a kid. Then you need some almonds in this. We'll be using around, you could say, 25 to 30 pieces of almonds. The almonds need to be sweet, remember that. Then you need some bay leaves, oil. You'll be requiring some butter. The butter is in the fridge. I'll take it out because it's a little bit hot today in Islamabad, and the butter will start melting too quickly. Then you need some garam masala, black pepper powder. You need cumin powder. You need coriander powder. You need salt to taste. You need some turmeric powder, red chili powder, ginger garlic should be fresh, remember that. And then you need some green chilies. These are all the ingredients for today's recipe. This is a complete gravy recipe, and we'll be cooking for at least 5 people today. And let's get started with the recipe. So firstly, what do you need? You need a wok and you need a pan. So what I'll do is I'll place the wok over here. I'll bring it to heat. And once it comes to heat, what we'll do is we'll add some oil. Now, the onions for this recipe will be cooked in 2 parts. What I'll do first is I shall add half a cup of oil first, and that is the oil I'll be using today, and the remaining will go at the back. Why? Because then we'll be using some butter, which will come on later. Then we will pick up an onion, we'll keep it over here. As you can see, the root is there. I shall just take the root out, slice it out like this, keep it on the side, cut it from the center, and now finely slice one onion. The onion must be finely sliced because this recipe will be using onion in two ways, remember that. The finer the onion, the better the result would be, and the texture of the recipe will also be perfect. And also we can say, as in Pakistan they say, the taste will be magnificent. Okay, the oil is almost coming to heat. What I'll do is I'll just take the root and throw it in the bin because I do not need it anymore, and I'll push the onions on one side. When the onions are on one side, what we'll do is we shall just take a little bit of ginger right now and we shall just cut it in slices. Once I'm done cutting in slices, I shall just thinly chop it. We also call this julienne, and go as close as you can. The reason behind cutting it super thin is that if it will be super thin, what will happen is that if it comes in your mouth, it won't dominate all the other flavors. There was some water in the pan, it's fine. Just transfer the onions in it slowly and gradually and let it cook. You have to brown these onions, remember that, when they are sliced. So I'll cook it on high heat, but I'll give it a lid for at least, you could say, 2 minutes so that the onions get super soft. Pick up the ginger goes in, and then just add some salt, around a 1/4 teaspoon. Spread it out, mix it up. And take a spatula and just press it down so that the onions get equal heat. Now what I'll do is I'll reduce the heat to medium. The heat goes down, and give it a lid and let it cook for 2 minutes on medium heat. Now on the other hand, what do I need? I need some garlic. The garlic will be used around 5 cloves, so these are 4. What I'll do is I'll just take some on the side and I shall just press it like this in front of you. Slowly and gradually, it will take you a long way. Smash it up, bring it close together, and just finely chop it. Once you chop it finely, you will get the best texture possible. This is done. Clean the blade, smear around, and this is done. I'll push the garlic on the side and keep it over here. Now what I need is, I need 2 medium onions. What I'll do is I shall just take the root out first. Keep this on the side so that the onions don't stick together, and the root is always a little tough to dissolve when it's cooking, remember that. What I'll do is I shall just cut the onion into 4 quarters like this in front of you, and then we shall pick up the jug over here and transfer all the onions into this. The onions go in. What I'll do is I'll take just half a cup of water, add it over here, and then blend it properly. Bring it over here and blend it into fine paste. I've blended the onions into a super fine paste. Now on the other hand over here, if you can see that the onions are getting brown. So till the time this gets brown, what I'll do is I shall just clean up and then go towards the next step immediately. Now as you can see, I just fried the onions, cleaned up over here, and now the next step. Now what I'll do is I'll first add the garlic over here. We'll fry the garlic on high heat. Not for too long, just for around 30 seconds so that the garlic loses its flavor in the oil and we get a nice aroma. On the other hand, what I'll do is I'll quickly just take 3 pieces of green chili and take my paring knife. I'll cut the top part off and place it on the side like this. And then I'll just make a slit in the middle and then fry these green chilies also in the oil. Now step by step we shall go, increase the heat to full, and then just tilt the pan so that they get a nice deep frying effect. As you can see, it's frying. We'll give it around like 10 to 15 seconds, not too long. Why? Because I just want the skin of the green chili to get nicely covered in oil. Okay, on the other hand, what I'll do is I'll take 2 pieces of the leaf, I'll place it in. We shall just fry it also for like 30 seconds, not too long. Why? Because we want the flavor to be amalgamated in this properly. On the other hand, what I'll do is I'll take the cumin and I'll transfer all the cumin over here, and we shall fry this nicely. And we shall just mix it so that the cumin gets a nice frying effect and the flavor. Over here, the garlic has turned light brown. Now what I'll do is I shall just pick up all the onion, which was converted into a paste, and I'll transfer it over here. Shake it up, keep it on the back side, and just mix it now. This is done. Now what I'll do is I'll give it a lid first and let this cook for at least 2 to 3 minutes on medium-low heat. So till then this is cooking, we'll go for a short break, and once we're back, I'll let you know what to do. Don't go anywhere, keep watching Indus Cuisine. Welcome back. You're watching Indus Cuisine and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. During the break, I just waited for you, and over here, as you can see, the onions which I added, the paste has completely turned into a nice texture. Okay, now what I'll do is I shall just pick up another pan, and now what I'll do is I shall transfer all of this into this. Increase the heat to high. Transfer whatever's into this pan into this one, and just remember one thing, because there's a lot of oil, you will just scrape it. Why? Because this will almost accumulate to 1 tablespoon, and I will not waste that. Give it a lid, spread it out like this, and let this come to heat. So till then this is coming to heat, what I'll do is I shall just change the board, and we shall now place the chicken over here and cut it a bit. So take out whichever piece you have which has a bone in it, which is the thigh and the leg usually, and we shall make slight cuts to it so that it is cooked through and through. So what I'll do is I shall just keep the wings on the side. I'll take a paring knife, I shall just cut it like this so that the heat penetrates till the center. Slowly and gradually, remember that. And if you see a white piece which is a little thicker on the thicker side, what I'll do is I shall just pass the knife through and through, which I did over here, and I'll show it again. Pass it like this, the heat will pass through and it will cook much more quicker. Okay, this is done. What I'll do is I don't need this knife, I'll keep it over here, and now we shall just transfer all the chicken into this. You don't need this bowl, keep it at the back. Transfer all the chicken into this, and now rinse your hands properly. Now just mix the chicken properly so that it gets a very nice flavor. And it gets coated properly now. What I'll do is I shall just add a 1/4 cup of water by spreading it out, remember that. Place it at the back, shake it, increase the heat to full, and give this a lid and cook it on high heat for 2 minutes. Okay, till the time this is cooking, what I'll do is I shall just pick up around 4 pieces of tomatoes. I shall just pick up my knife and take the eye out like this. And just pick all of this up and throw it in the bin. Keep your station super clean, remember that. Cut it from the center. And now bring the jug back, which you have washed. Do not put it in the same jug. Why? Because for this recipe it needs to be a little different. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll add just a 1/4 cup of water. Slowly and gradually. Now as you can see, the peppercorn is fresh. Add it over here, around a tablespoon. And now we should process it into a super fine paste. Place it over here and convert it into a paste for at least 30 to 40 seconds. We've converted it into a fine paste. I'll just take the lid off and let it be over here. Let it air a bit. On the other hand, the chicken over here is doing fine completely. Now what I'll do is I'll just pick up the spatula, mix it up, and let the water evaporate completely. So till then the water is evaporating, what I'll do is I shall just take some ginger, because now we need the ginger to be added in the recipe. We shall shred it towards the thicker side, remember that. And be super careful. Why? Because you do not want to cut your hand at all. Keep an eye contact and keep turning the ginger around, because at times a piece of ginger has more concentration and it doesn't go super well on the blades of the shredder. Careful and be super close. When this is done, just take the last part and throw it in the bin. You do not need this. Clean it up, shake it, and pull whatever's inside. Now as you can see, the ginger's over here. Keep this at the back. Take your knife and start finely chopping it. When this is done, clean the blade, pick it up and transfer it into this. Now what I'll do is I shall start mixing it. And now we shall add all the tomato over here. As I told you, this will be a gravy-oriented recipe, and I'm making it in a pan purposely so that each and every piece of the chicken gets heat individually and properly. Okay, when this is done, now what I'll do is I shall just add half a teaspoon of salt. The reason is because I haven't added enough salt till now. So add the salt. And this is done. Now just shake it up. The salt will settle in itself. And now let's add some spices. We need to add the coriander powder. Spread it out properly. We need the garam masala to go in right now. Whatever is used goes at the back over here. Keep your station super clean. Then we add the turmeric powder. Goes at the back. And then we add the red chili powder, which should be just a tablespoon. That's it. This is too much. I'll keep it on the side. I do not need so much for this recipe. Now what I'll do is I shall just shake it and let it submerge inside. Now till I'm mixing this, we'll just clean up a bit and then I'll let you know what to do next. So as you can see, the chicken has come to par with the idea that is cooked properly. Now what I'll do is I'll keep this at the back because I don't need it anymore, and we shall just start continuing with the recipe. Now what I'll do is I'll take the butter, keep it here, and just cut it into 4 pieces. Once this is done, I shall just pick it up, spread it out like this. It's delicious. And just give this a lid. Now what will happen is that the butter will start melting very slowly and gradually, and I shall just clean my hands and also add all of the onions which were fried on the top. So spread it out because you want this flavor to be mixed in the whole recipe. The onion tastes really nice, remember that. Give it a lid, keep this on the side or at the back, and whatever you've used goes on the side also. Now we do not need anything after this, but now we need to add something in the blender. The blender will be added with some almonds and a 1.5 cups of water. This goes in. Now what I'll do is I shall just take a pinch of salt. That's it. And we shall process it till the time the almonds give a nice white color to the water also. Once more. And this is done. Now just take the lid off and pick all the goodness up. Increase the heat to full. As you can see, the butter is coming down. Add it on the top. Now this is basically, you could also call it as almond milk. Keep this at the back, you don't need it anymore. And now let this cook for at least 7 to 8 minutes. What I'll do is I'll just take this and start shaking it a bit so that everything starts mixing nicely and it settles beautifully. As you can see, it's nicely cooked and the flavor of the almond is going to seep into it and bring a very nice luxurious flavor out. You have to mix it, remember that. And now let this cook for 7 to 8 minutes on really low simmering heat. So till then this is cooking, we'll just clean up and then show you the final look of the recipe. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. As you can see, today's recipe is ready. It was super easy, and if you can realize this or understand this, that this recipe is cooked in every household in Pakistan, just imagine how delicious this would be. I have just added a little bit of ginger, some almonds and some green chilies on the side. That's how people in Pakistan take it. This is a single serving, which means in Pakistan people take at least 3 pieces of chicken minimum and some gravy. On the other hand, you can see there's a lot over here left. Why? Because I've cooked for 5 people, and whenever we cook for Pakistani people, we cook for a family. I hope you liked today's episode, and remember one thing, if you want to learn something new, you can always go towards the Indus News page on YouTube and comment over there on the Indus Cuisine videos. I'll see you in another episode of Indus Cuisine. Take care of yourself, lovely people. Have a wonderful day and an evening. Ciao. Bye-bye.